As we age, many of us face a profound question. Where and how should we spend our golden years? For countless elderly individuals, the instinctive answer is to be near their children, thinking that proximity will ensure love, care, and happiness. But is this universally true? Or could this decision inadvertently lead to greater suffering? This question isn't just about logistics. It taps into deep-seated emotions, societal norms, and spiritual teachings. Through the lens of Zen Buddhism, we'll explore how attachment, expectations, and the pursuit of emotional closeness can shape our experiences in old age, and sometimes lead us away from peace rather than toward it. Let's begin with a story that exemplifies these challenges. An elderly man, after decades of hard work raising a family and providing for his children, found himself alone in a quiet house. His once bustling home, filled with laughter, arguments, and the hum of daily life, had grown silent as his children moved out to build lives of their own. He missed them deeply and felt the creeping emptiness of old age. One day, sitting in the solitude of his now cavernous living room, he thought, "Perhaps it is time to live near my children. They will care for me, and I will not feel so lonely anymore." Isn't it the duty of children to look after their parents in old age? This thought filled him with hope. Surely, being near his family again would rekindle the warmth and love he longed for. So, he packed his belongings and moved to a neighborhood close to one of his children. Initially, it felt like a dream come true. His grandchildren greeted him with joy, and his children promised frequent visits. He believed this decision was the key to a peaceful and happy old age. However, the reality soon turned out to be far from his expectations. In the beginning, everything seemed perfect. The man's weekends were filled with family dinners, his grandchildren's laughter echoing through the house, and heartfelt conversations with his children. For the first time in years, he felt truly alive. But over time, subtle changes began to creep in. The visits became less frequent. His calls to his children were met with rushed responses, "I'm busy, Dad," or "I'll come by later." His grandchildren, once so eager to spend time with him, grew occupied with their own activities and friends. The man found himself sitting alone, day after day, waiting for someone to call, someone to visit, someone to fill the void he felt inside. Despite living physically close to his family, he began to realize that the emotional distance between them had not diminished. If anything, his longing for their presence made the absence feel even sharper. One evening, as he sat in silence, he remembered a teaching he had heard long ago. Attachment is the root of suffering. The words echoed in his mind, and he couldn't help but wonder, am I too attached to my children? Have I placed my happiness entirely in their hands? As time passed, the man began to feel a growing resentment. He had devoted his entire life to raising his children, sacrificing his own desires to give them the best opportunities. Now, in his old age, he expected them to repay him with care and attention. But these expectations weighed heavily on his heart. He couldn't understand why his children seemed distant, why they didn't prioritize him the way he had once prioritized them. Why did I move here? He often thought to himself. If I am just going to be left alone, is this how my old age is meant to be? The bitterness in his heart grew, and with it, his sense of suffering. One night, during a restless sleep, he dreamt of a wise Zen master. In the dream, the master said, "You are clinging to an idea that your children must fulfill your desires. The more you expect from them, the more you will suffer. True peace does not come from others, it comes from within." When he awoke, the man couldn't shake the words from his mind. Slowly, he began to realize the truth in the master's teachings. He had placed unrealistic expectations on his children, believing that being physically close to them would automatically lead to emotional closeness. Yet, even though they lived nearby, their lives were their own, filled with responsibilities, challenges, and priorities that didn't always include him. The more the man meditated on his situation, the more he understood the nature of his suffering. It wasn't his children's actions that caused his pain. It was his attachment to them and his belief that they owed him something. He had placed his happiness in their hands, forgetting a lesson he had once known well. Nothing is yours. You cannot hold on to anything. Everything you have is borrowed. His children, too, were not his to possess. They had their own lives, their own families, their own paths. By clinging to them, he was trying to hold on to something that was not his to control, and in doing so, he had set himself up for disappointment. Another realization soon followed. By moving close to his children, the man had inadvertently become dependent on them. He found himself waiting for their visits, relying on their presence to bring him comfort and joy. But this dependence had stripped him of his own independence. He had given away his power to find happiness within himself, placing it entirely in the hands of others. He remembered a story told by a Buddhist monk long ago. In the story, a man carried a heavy sack of grain on his back as he traveled from one village to another. The burden weighed him down, and he complained bitterly about how difficult the journey was. But when someone offered to carry the sack for him, he refused, saying, "If I do not carry this burden myself, I will never build the strength to walk on my own." The elderly man realized that he had been carrying the burden of old age, but had placed it on his children's shoulders instead of bearing it himself. He had expected them to carry his emotional weight, but in doing so, he had weakened his own ability to find peace and contentment within. One quiet afternoon, as the man sat in meditation under the shade of a tree, a final realization came to him. He understood that living close to his children had not been the mistake. The mistake had been his attachment to the idea that they were responsible for his happiness. True peace, he realized, comes not from others, but from within oneself. He remembered the Buddhist teaching. Peace comes from within, do not seek it without. His children, no matter how much they loved him, could not provide him with the inner contentment he sought. That could only come from his own heart, from his own ability to let go of expectations and embrace the present moment as it was, not as he wished it to be. Instead of waiting for his children to call or visit, he began to cultivate gratitude for the times they did reach out. He stopped measuring his happiness by the frequency of their visits and instead focused on the simple joys of his daily life. The sound of birds in the morning, the warmth of the sun on his skin, the quiet moments of meditation that brought him closer to his own heart. As we navigate our own relationships and choices, this story invites us to reflect on our expectations and attachments. Are we placing the weight of our happiness on others? Are we clinging to ideas that may not serve us? By letting go of these attachments, we can find a deeper peace within ourselves and nurture relationships that are built on love and freedom rather than obligation. If this story resonates with you, consider exploring more on our channel, Buddhism in Modern Life. Don't forget to subscribe and join our community as we uncover timeless wisdom for today's challenges. Hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an update. Let us know in the comments how this story speaks to you and what you'd like to see next. In part 1, we explored the story of an elderly man whose attachment to his children and expectations of care led to significant suffering. His eventual realizations about attachment, impermanence, and self-reliance set the stage for deeper reflections on how individuals can cultivate true inner peace in their later years. As we move forward, let us delve into actionable insights inspired by Buddhist wisdom that offer a practical path to achieving independence, self-fulfillment, and contentment in old age. This section expands on the themes introduced earlier by offering real-world examples, practical exercises, and further stories to illuminate the way. 1. Examining the roots of attachment. Attachment, as taught by the Buddha, is the root cause of suffering. But what does this mean in the context of our relationships, particularly with our children? For many, the bond between parent and child is among the strongest attachments they will ever experience. However, this bond, while natural, often evolves into expectations that can cause pain. Parents invest decades of love, effort, and resources into raising their children. As a result, it is easy to unconsciously develop the belief that children owe their parents time, care, and attention in return. Consider this common scenario. A mother spends her life ensuring her children's success, helping with homework, cooking meals, and sacrificing personal goals for the family. As the children grow up and move away, the mother may expect phone calls, visits, or assistance in her later years. But when the children become consumed by their own families and careers, the mother may feel neglected or even betrayed. Is this feeling justified, or is it the product of unmet expectations? Buddhist teachings remind us that clinging to expectations, even ones that seem reasonable, creates unnecessary suffering. Relationships thrive when they are based on unconditional love rather than transactional expectations. When we impose our own desires on others, we risk straining these relationships and hurting ourselves. A father's story. A retired engineer in his late 70s once shared his story. He had 3 children, all of whom had successful careers abroad. After retirement, he sold his home and moved to the same city as his eldest son, hoping to spend more time with his family. Initially, everything seemed ideal. He'd see his grandchildren on weekends, enjoy dinner with his son and daughter-in-law, and feel like an integral part of their lives. But over time, things changed. Work commitments consumed his son's time, and the grandchildren grew less interested in spending afternoons with their grandfather. He found himself alone more often than not. Resentment began to brew, and his visits to their home became fewer. Eventually, his sense of isolation grew stronger than when he had lived far away. "I thought being close would solve everything," he admitted during a group meditation session. "But I had mistaken physical closeness for emotional connection. I had placed all my happiness in their hands, and when they didn't meet my expectations, I felt betrayed." By practicing detachment and shifting his perspective, he eventually learned to appreciate the moments he did have with his family without letting unmet expectations cloud his peace of mind. His story underscores the dangers of seeking fulfillment through others and serves as a reminder that true contentment arises within. 2. Building emotional independence. For many elders, emotional independence can feel like an unattainable goal. After decades of focusing on others, spouses, children, and grandchildren, the idea of prioritizing one's own inner world can feel foreign. Yet emotional independence is not about isolating oneself or rejecting family. It is about cultivating the strength to find joy and peace within, regardless of external circumstances. Practical exercises for emotional independence. 1. Daily meditation practice. Meditation helps anchor the mind and redirect thoughts inward. Begin with 10 to 15 minutes each morning. Focus on your breath, letting go of any thoughts of what others should or shouldn't do. With consistent practice, you'll notice a growing sense of inner calm. 2. Gratitude journaling. Each day, write down 3 things you are grateful for. These don't have to be grand gestures. They can be as simple as the warmth of the sun or a good cup of tea. This practice shifts your focus from what is lacking to what is present, fostering contentment. 3. Finding purpose beyond family. Explore hobbies, volunteer work, or creative pursuits. Whether it's painting, gardening, or teaching local children, engaging in activities that bring you joy creates a sense of purpose and reduces dependence on others for happiness. The empty cup. There is a famous Zen story about a scholar who visited a Zen master to learn about enlightenment. The master began pouring tea into the scholar's cup, but did not stop even when the tea overflowed. The scholar exclaimed, "The cup is full. No more will go in." The master replied, "Like this cup, you are full of your own ideas and expectations. How can I teach you Zen unless you first empty your cup?" In the same way, emotional independence requires us to empty our mental cups of expectations, past grievances, and future anxieties. By doing so, we create space for peace and fulfillment to flow in naturally. 3. Navigating the challenges of solitude. One of the most significant hurdles in old age is the fear of being alone. Many equate solitude with loneliness, but Buddhism offers a different perspective. Solitude can be a gateway to self-discovery and peace when approached with the right mindset. The transformative power of solitude. Solitude allows us to reconnect with ourselves and the present moment. When we stop seeking external distractions, we create room to explore our inner world. This process can be uncomfortable at first, especially for those unaccustomed to being alone. However, it is through this discomfort that true growth occurs. A widow's journey. An elderly widow named May found herself struggling with loneliness after her husband passed away. For months, she kept herself busy with visits to friends and family, but the emptiness persisted. One day, She attended a Buddhist retreat where the teacher encouraged her to spend 1 hour each day sitting in silence. Initially, the stillness felt unbearable. Memories of her husband flooded her mind, and tears often accompanied her practice. But over time, she noticed a shift. She began to cherish these quiet moments, finding comfort in simply being with herself. "I realized that I wasn't truly alone," she said. "I had myself, and that was enough." Her experience illustrates how solitude, when embraced, can lead to profound self-awareness and healing. Try these tips to accept loneliness. 1. Create a daily ritual, whether it's morning tea in the garden or evening walks. Establish a routine that allows you to enjoy your own company. 2. Learn something new. Use this time to explore a skill or topic that has always intrigued you. Learning keeps the mind engaged and fosters a sense of accomplishment. 3. Connect with nature. Spending time in nature has a grounding effect, reminding us of the interconnectedness of all life. A simple stroll in the park or sitting by a river can provide immense solace. 4. Redefining relationships with children. As parents age, the dynamics of their relationships with their children naturally shift. Understanding and accepting these changes is crucial for maintaining healthy connections. Shifting from dependence to interdependence. Instead of viewing your children as caretakers, strive for interdependence. This means recognizing that both parties have their own needs, responsibilities, and limitations. Communicate openly about your expectations while respecting their boundaries. The gift of respect. A grandmother named Anita shared her experience of navigating this shift with her adult daughter. Initially, she struggled with feelings of rejection when her daughter couldn't visit as often as she'd like. After a heartfelt conversation, Anita realized that her daughter's busy schedule didn't equate to a lack of love. By respecting her daughter's time and finding joy in the moments they did share, their bond grew stronger. Simple practices for better relationships. 1. Active listening. During conversations, focus entirely on your children's words without interjecting your own opinions. This practice fosters understanding and connection. 2. Express gratitude. A simple thank you for their time or efforts goes a long way in nurturing goodwill. 3. Release control. Let go of trying to influence their choices. Trust that they are capable of navigating their own paths. If you found the insights in this section resonant, take a moment to reflect on which practical step you can implement today. Whether it's a gratitude journal, a moment of solitude, or a heartfelt conversation, each small action contributes to a life of greater peace and independence. Let me know if you'd like to explore any part further. In the final leg of our journey, we dive into how true fulfillment in old age arises not from external conditions, but from cultivating the right mindset, spiritual grounding, and acceptance of impermanence. Let us explore how one can shape a meaningful legacy, find peace in solitude, and create a life that inspires others without relying on circumstances or the validation of loved ones. 1. The power of perspective shift. Many elders reach a crossroads where they must choose how to interpret their circumstances. One path leads to resentment and loneliness, while the other leads to contentment and meaning. As we saw earlier, the elderly man's suffering stemmed not from his children's actions, but from his expectations of what they owed him. The same reality can evoke two vastly different emotional responses depending on how we view it. The shift from "why me" to "what now?" Instead of asking, "Why are my children neglecting me?" or "Why do I feel so alone?" the elderly man began asking, "What can I do now to create joy and peace in my life?" This subtle shift empowered him to reclaim control over his happiness, stop blaming others for his emotional state, a focus on solutions instead of problems. For instance, he began exploring hobbies like painting, gardening, and storytelling. Each activity filled his days with purpose and allowed him to share his wisdom with those around him. Take the story of a woman named Mrs. Lin, a retired schoolteacher. After her husband passed away and her children moved abroad, Mrs. Lin fell into a deep loneliness. She initially resented her children for living so far away, but one day, she attended a local community workshop where she taught art to young students. The joy she found in helping others transformed her outlook. By focusing on what she could offer the world rather than what she lacked, Mrs. Lin turned her solitude into a source of fulfillment. This mindset shift is available to anyone. By embracing the present moment and seeking meaningful actions, we free ourselves from the shackles of resentment and blame. 2. The role of spiritual practice in aging gracefully. As people grow older, their physical capabilities may decline, but their spiritual growth has no such limits. In fact, old age presents a unique opportunity to deepen one's understanding of life's impermanence and cultivate inner peace through spiritual practices. The practice of meditation and reflection. The elderly man in our story rediscovered the power of meditation. Sitting under the shade of a tree, he allowed his mind to settle and his heart to open. Through meditation, he let go of his attachment to his children and replaced it with an inner contentment that no external situation could shake. Benefits of meditation for elders. 1. Emotional balance. Meditation helps process emotions like sadness, anger, and loneliness, turning them into acceptance and peace. 2. Clarity and wisdom. Regular reflection reveals the deeper truths of life, such as impermanence and non-attachment. 3. Improved health. Studies show that meditation reduces stress, lowers blood pressure, and improves sleep quality. Embracing daily spiritual rituals. Simple rituals, like lighting incense, reciting mantras, or reflecting on Buddhist teachings, bring structure and meaning to each day. For the elderly man, chanting the Buddha's words reminded him that peace comes from within. These practices served as anchors, grounding him when the waves of loneliness or longing arose. 3. Accepting impermanence as freedom. One of the most powerful teachings of Buddhism is the truth of impermanence. Everything changes. Our relationships, our bodies, and even our roles in life are impermanent. While this reality can feel unsettling, it is also liberating when fully understood. Letting go of past roles. Parents often struggle to accept that their role as caregivers has ended. The elderly man realized that clinging to his past identity as a father, the one who provided, guided, and received unconditional love, was a source of his suffering. By accepting that his children had their own lives to lead, he freed himself from the burden of trying to control or reclaim the past. In doing so, he also freed his children from the guilt and pressure of meeting his expectations. Imagine a retired businessman named Mr. Patel, who spent decades building a company and raising his family. In his old age, he clung to the identity of provider. When his children no longer sought his advice, he felt rejected and useless. It was only after attending a retreat on impermanence that he understood. His children's independence was a reflection of his success as a father, not his failure. With this realization, Mr. Patel began volunteering at a youth center, sharing his wisdom with a new generation and finding a renewed sense of purpose. 4. Building a legacy that inspires. A meaningful legacy is not built on wealth or achievements, but on the love, wisdom, and values we leave behind. As the elderly man grew more at peace with himself, his children noticed the change. Their visits became more genuine and heartfelt, free from obligation, sharing wisdom without expectation. Instead of demanding his children's attention, the elderly man began sharing stories of his life, struggles, and lessons learned. He wrote letters to his grandchildren, filled with advice on navigating life's challenges. These simple acts of love became his legacy. Ideas for building a legacy. 1. Storytelling. Share your life lessons through letters, journals, or videos. 2. Mentoring. Offer guidance to younger generations in your community. 3. Acts of kindness. Leave a mark through generosity, whether through charity or small daily gestures. By focusing on what he could give rather than what he lacked, the elderly man created a lasting impact that extended beyond his immediate family. 5. The freedom of non-attachment. In the final years of his life, the elderly man embodied the wisdom of non-attachment. He no longer sought happiness from his children or external circumstances. Instead, he found joy in the sound of birds in the morning, the peace of sitting under a tree, the love he shared freely, without expectation. When his children visited, it was no longer out of guilt or duty, but out of genuine love. Their relationship flourished because he let go of control and embraced each moment as it was. The story of the elderly man teaches us a profound truth. Happiness in old age does not come from living near our children, wealth, or status. It comes from within, from accepting impermanence, practicing non-attachment, and finding peace in the present moment. Key takeaways. 1. Shift your perspective. Focus on what you can control and create joy in your daily life. 2. Embrace spiritual practices. Meditation and reflection are powerful tools for inner peace. 3. Let go of expectations. Release the need for others to fulfill your happiness. 4. Build a legacy of love. Share your wisdom and values with the world. 5. Find joy in solitude. Solitude is not loneliness. It is the freedom to enjoy your own company. As we age, the greatest gift we can give ourselves and others is the gift of inner peace. By letting go of attachments and embracing life as it is, we discover a profound freedom that no external circumstance can take away. If you found this video inspiring, please consider subscribing to Buddhism in Modern Life. Your support helps us continue sharing timeless teachings that bring peace and clarity to our daily lives. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thank you for joining us on this journey. May we all find the strength to let go, the wisdom to live fully, and the peace that comes from within.